long before the crowns of kings weighed heavy on mortal brows, before temples scraped the skies and the names of gods were written in stone. There was a time when the world breathed slowly, heavily, as though burdened by its own secrets. The trees stood taller then, gnarled with age and wisdom, their roots wrapped tight around the bones of ancient things. The winds moved with intent, whispering forgotten truths between the rocks and rivers. The stars were fewer, but they burned with a clarity mankind would never again witness. Forgotten age, drowned in myth and shrouded by centuries of silence, that a man named Valen dared to break the covenant between mortal and divine. Valen was not born of silk or scripture. He was not a king. He was something far worse, a warlord carved from the meat of fire and famine. His people did not sing. Their throats were dry, their eyes hollow, their bones pressed sharp against thin, ashen skin. They did not thrive. They endured. And Valon, like a blister upon the earth, thrived upon their desperation. His armies did not march with fanfare or drums. They descended like wolves, silent until the last moment, then violent beyond imagination. In the north, his name was not spoken. It was whispered, if it was spoken at all. Valon, a word like a knife dragged across the tongue. Mothers used it to still crying babies. Old men spat at the ground when it was uttered. He was a curse in flesh, a storm walking upright. He ruled a land that the gods themselves had abandoned. The skies, once fertile with rain, had hardened into dust. The rivers, once holy and pure, had dried into cracked veins in the soil. Crops withered before they broke the ground. Animals fell dead in the fields, ribs sharp beneath molted fur. Hunger had teeth and it gnawed at every soul. The priests knelt at their crumbling altars, burning the last of their incense and whispering desperate prayers to gods who had not answered in years. But Valen, bitter and proud, turned his back to the sanctuaries. He spat in the dirt and declared, "The gods are cowards. I will take from them what they refuse to give." So it was in the heart of winter, when the cold could peel skin from bone and the snow fell sideways like razors. Valen climbed the sacred mountain alone. None dared to follow. To walk the mountain was to invite death, the elder said. It was a place of silence, of old power where even the wind bent its path. At the peak, they claimed, dwelled a spirit, a guardian, a lesser god bound by blood to the earth. It was not a giver of gifts. It had no temples, no priests. Its purpose was not to bless, but to balance, to bleed if the world demanded it. Valen meant to bleed it dry. He ascended for days, boots cracking over stone and frost, his cloak stiff with ice, beard thick with frozen breath. He ate nothing, drank only snow melted in his cupped hands. Each night he slept by fireless rock, and each night he dreamed of screaming things buried beneath the snow. When at last he reached the summit, twilight clung to the horizon like a dying ember. The sky boiled black with storm clouds, and the wind howled like the world itself were in mourning. The sacred stones rose before him, a circle of monoliths etched with time-worn glyphs, half swallowed by moss and ancient frost. And in their center stood the spirit. It did not announce itself. It had no need. It looked like a man, if a man were made of bone and shadow, draped in antlers and wrapped in skin that shimmered like a lake beneath the moon. It stood still as death, but its eyes, deep, luminous, endless, held the weight of eternity. They did not judge. They did not plead. They simply remembered. Not love, not hate, balance. The spirit did not move. It only watched. Valen did not kneel. He offered no prayer. His gods had long since rotted. He drew his sword, a chipped relic of war blackened by flame and blood, and charged. The spirit did not flinch. It reached out with one long, withered hand, not to strike, but to touch the heart beating like a war drum inside Valen's chest. He drove the blade through its ribs. There was no scream, only a sound faint and broken like wind crying through the hollow of a skull. Silver blood sprayed in hot arcs across the ancient stones, and the spirit collapsed like smoke scattered on the wind. The earth trembled. The sky cracked open, a jagged red wound above the world. Valen fell to his knees and cupped the blood steaming in the frigid air to his lips. He drank. It tasted of fire and grief and eternity. He thought he had won, but as the last of the spirit's breath left its body, a whisper slid into the wind, carried not in voice but in curse. Man shall be beast. Beast shall be hunger forever. Valen rose and then screamed. Agony lanced through his spine. His bones folded inward, snapping like dried twigs. Flesh sloughed from his limbs in thick clumps. His hands broke at the wrist, the bones reshaping, rearranging into monstrous claws. His mouth tore wide, splitting skin and muscle as teeth, too many, too sharp, spilled from his gums. He fell to all fours, retching silver blood across the stones. The curse took him like fire takes dry grass on fast and total. His back cracked and grew, forming a terrible hunched silhouette. His ribs jutted outward, no longer human. Hair, black as midnight, erupted from his skin, slick and steaming. His scream became a howl, so loud it broke the silence of the mountains, echoing through forest and stone alike. The men who had waited for him at the mountain's base turned to flee. But the fog came down the slopes thick and fast, and Valen followed. The first man never saw death come, just a flash, a blur of black. Then his head left his shoulders, spinning through the snow in a burst of red mist. The second screamed as claws punctured his spine, lifting him from the ground like a doll. Blood sprayed in arcs as his limbs twitched. The third tried to fight. Brave, foolish. He swung a bronze axe, but Valen caught the blow, snapped the weapon, tore the man's arm free, and used it to crush his skull. The rest ran. They ran for the trees into the dark, crying out for gods who would not hear. Valen hunted them. He did not need eyes. He could smell them, smell their sweat, their panic, their flesh. He pulled them from roots, dragged them from under frozen logs. He ripped their bellies open and fed on screams. Some he spared, but not out of mercy. Those he bit, he cursed. By dawn, the mountain was still. Snow drifted down gently, hiding the blood, but in the forest below, bodies twitched. Those touched by Valen's teeth began to change. They screamed as bones broke. They clawed at their own faces as fur split through skin. Some tore their families apart before the moon set. Villages along the river vanished. Doors ripped from hinges, walls splashed with gore. No fires burned, no breath stirred. The survivors whispered of creatures that walked like men but howled like wolves. That came with the fog and left only blood. No priest could stop them. No spell undid the bite. The god's blood had soaked the land, and now it lived. The hunger grew beast. He was the curse incarnate. He no longer needed to feed. He hunted for joy. He peeled open skulls to feel the warmth inside. He tore arms from sockets to hear the snap. He ruled the darkness, and not as a king, as punishment. His howls summoned others, wolves with human eyes, men with teeth too sharp, things from the deep earth bound in sinew and madness. He built no cities. His throne was made of antlers and bones, his crown a ring of dried faces. Centuries passed, maps forgot the mountain. Forests crept back over ruins, the bloodline spread, a silent poison in human veins. Sometimes it skipped generations, sometimes it slept in a child's bones, only to wake under the full moon with violent hunger. And when it did, the old fear returned. People forgot the name Valen, but they remembered the deaths. They remembered the screaming in the fall. They gave it a new name, Werewolf. And still in the marrow of man, the god's blood